Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are jumping headfirst into the pretty wild and fascinating theory from independent researcher J. Alfred. It's a hypothesis that might just change how you think about, well, what it means to be human. So, let's start with a question that really gets to the heart of it all. For pretty much all of history, we've thought of ourselves as these single biological creatures. But what if that's not the full picture? This is our starting point for understanding J. Alfred's idea of a hidden partnership. Now, before we get into Alfred's really out-there theory, we first have to get our heads around a concept that has already completely shaken up biology. The idea that complex life didn't just evolve, it merged. Yeah, take a look at this. This is from the amazing evolutionary biologist Lynn Margulis. She basically argued that cooperation, different life forms literally fusing together, is one of the main drivers of evolution. So it's not just survival of the fittest, it's also about collaboration. And this whole process has a name, endosymbiosis. And get this, it's not just a theory, it's the reason our cells have little power plants inside them called mitochondria. We're talking billions of years ago. They were just free-floating bacteria. Then another cell swallowed them up, and they've been living inside our cells ever since. So this completely flips the script. We go from Darwin's classic tree of life, where everything just branches out, to the Darwin-Margulis net of life. Here, those branches can actually weave back into each other, creating totally new and more complex beings. It's a fundamental shift in thinking. Okay, so hold that thought about biology. We're going to switch gears completely and talk about something totally different. The fourth state of matter, plasma. So check this out. In the early 2000s, physicists actually created these little self-organizing plasma cells in a lab. And what's so wild is that they acted alive. They could grow, they could communicate with each other, and they could even make copies of themselves. It showed that lifelike behavior isn't just a carbon-based thing. Which, of course, leads to the big question. If we can make plasma act alive in a lab, could it happen on its own, out in the real world, here on Earth? Well, when you're talking about ordinary plasma, the physics says absolutely not. The surface of our planet is just all wrong for it. It's way too cold, the pressure's all wrong, and any plasma that does form just vanishes in an instant. It's a completely hostile environment. So, it seems like a dead end, right? Ordinary plasma life just can't work here. But this is exactly where independent researcher J. Alfred comes in with a really radical idea, and he looks to one of the biggest mysteries in the universe to solve it. Alfred's whole hypothesis hinges on dark matter. He suggests that there's this parallel dark sector of reality with a totally different kind of plasma that plays by different rules. A plasma that could be stable, that could be long-lasting, even at the temperatures we have right here on Earth. And this is where you can really see the difference. According to J. Alfred's theory, this dark plasma is just different. It has a much weaker electric charge, so it doesn't just fall apart. It can exist at all sorts of temperatures. And this is the really crucial part. It barely interacts with our kind of matter, so it could exist right alongside us without, burning us to a crisp. So, this idea of a stable, non-destructive dark plasma, that's the key. That's what allows J. Alfred to propose this absolutely mind-blowing idea of a fusion with humanity itself. Alfred lays out this process of, cross-dimensional endosymbiosis. The theory goes that an intelligent, already existing dark plasma life form would find and voluntarily merge with a developing human fetus. It's not an attack or an invasion, it's a chosen fusion. And the result of this fusion is what J. Alfred calls Homo-Plasma Sapiens, a hybrid species, right? A creature that is at the same time a physical, carbon-based human and an invisible, conscious plasma-based being. Two forms of life sharing one single existence. And this would be a win-win situation. Alfred suggests the human part of the equation gets a major cognitive boost, which would be a huge advantage for survival and reproduction. And in return, the plasma being gets to experience our physical world through the human senses, a world it would otherwise be completely blind to. So let's go a bit deeper. What would these plasma beings actually be like, according to J. Alfred's hypothesis? What are their fundamental characteristics? Well, Alfred's work actually lays out a kind of biophysics for them. He describes these beings as made of a low-density liquid crystal plasma.
Their natural shape is sort of an orb, but they are masters of transformation. They can shapeshift, they can change their size, and they can even go from glowing to transparent to completely dark just by changing their internal frequency.
And how they would communicate? It would be totally alien to us. Alfred theorizes that they use vibrations that travel along magnetic fields, these things called Alphen waves. They'd also use electromagnetic fields and could even project holograms directly from their minds. And this is probably the most mind-bending part of the whole theory. Because their consciousness would be electromagnetic, their thoughts could literally physically shape the plasma world around them. I mean, think about that. Their reality could be a direct reflection of their collective consciousness, where they could create entire landscapes just by thinking them into existence. Okay, so if we just let that idea sink in for a minute, the implications are just staggering. It expands our whole idea of what evolution and life itself even is. The real takeaway here is that this theory takes that net of life we talked about earlier and stretches it into unseen dimensions. It suggests evolution isn't just something happening here on Earth with biology, but that it's a cosmic, interdimensional process, with life weaving itself together across different kinds of matter. And all of this leaves us with one final, huge question to chew on. What if those huge leaps forward for humanity, the birth of art, of philosophy, of self-awareness, what if they weren't just the product of our brains evolving, but the result of this silent, ancient partnership? And this quote from J. Alfred himself really just captures his entire vision perfectly. It's a vision of humanity not as some lonely species on a random planet, but as a cosmic collaboration, a hybrid creature whose story is way more complex and maybe a whole lot stranger than we ever could have imagined.